Ade and Amara had been married for years, but their home remained quiet without the sound of children's laughter. Amara's inability to conceive weighed heavily on them both. Although Ade cared for her, he felt restless and started spending more time away from home. He looked for distractions to escape the strain he felt in their marriage. During one of his trips to a neighboring village, Ade met Aoife. She was unlike anyone he had ever known, full of life and mystery. Her beauty captivated him, and her presence made him feel alive in a way he hadn't in years. Their conversations were easy, and Ade found himself drawn to her more and more. He began visiting the village regularly just to see her. As the days turned into weeks, Ade's connection with Aoife deepened. She had a charm that made everything around her seem special. Ade felt rejuvenated when he was with her, as though he had discovered a new purpose in life. It wasn't long before their bond turned into a passionate affair. Meanwhile, back home, Amara felt the growing distance between them. Ade was physically present less often, and emotionally he seemed further away than ever. Amara threw herself into housework and community activities, trying to ignore the ache in her heart. She wanted to believe that their relationship could return to what it once was, even though the signs said otherwise. The affair with Aoife became a central part of Ade's life. He felt guilty about deceiving Amara but convinced himself he deserved happiness. Aoife's love made him forget his troubles, and he couldn't imagine giving her up. But when Aoife discovered she was pregnant, Ade's feelings became more complicated. He was happy about the prospect of becoming a father but knew this would create new challenges. Ade decided to keep the pregnancy a secret, thinking he could manage everything if he introduced Aoife to his family as a friend. He hoped to eventually make her his second wife, believing this plan would bring harmony to his life. Back in the village, Amara noticed Ade's unusual behavior. He mentioned a friend would be visiting, and though she didn't know the truth, she took it as an opportunity to distract herself. Amara prepared their home with great care, hoping to welcome the guest warmly and ease the growing tension between her and Ade. On the day of Aoife's arrival, Amara made sure everything was perfect. She cooked a grand meal, decorated the house, and greeted the villagers who had come to meet the visitor. Ade, however, felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. He wanted everything to go smoothly but knew this meeting carried risks. When Ade arrived with Aoife, the villagers welcomed them warmly, though a strange unease lingered in the air. Among the crowd was Ade's father, Chief Olu, whose watchful eyes seemed to sense something wasn't right. As Aoife was introduced to the family, Chief Olu's expression changed. Something about Aoife felt familiar, and the truth about her connection to Ade was closer to the surface than anyone realized. As soon as Chief Olu sees Aoife, his face changes. His skin goes pale and a wave of fear grips him. He cannot look away from her face, it's too familiar. She looks exactly like someone he once knew. Memories from his past, buried for years, suddenly resurface. Aoife is the daughter he had from a secret affair, a truth he had hoped would never come to light. The room grows quiet as Chief Olu rises from his seat. Without a word, he signals Ade to follow him outside. Confused, Ade obeys, sensing something serious. Outside, Chief Olu struggles to find the right words. His voice trembles as he begins. Ade, he says, his tone low and filled with regret, I need to tell you something I should have told you long ago. Before I married your mother, I had a relationship with a woman in another village. That woman had a child. Her name is Aoife. The last time I saw her, she was just 4 years old, right before her mother married another man. However, her mother has been sending me pictures of her over the years, so I would recognize her if our paths ever crossed. Ade's heart stops for a moment. He stares at his father, not understanding. What are you saying? Ade finally asks. Are you telling me Aoife is my sister? Chief Olu nods, his face etched with guilt. Yes, Ade. She's your half-sister. I was ashamed of my past and too afraid to tell anyone. I never thought you would meet her, let alone. His voice fades as he looks down in shame. Its mind spins. The truth hits him like a blow. The woman he loves, the one carrying his child, is his sister. Anger and shock explode within him. You hid this from me? From her. He yells, his voice cracking. How could you let this happen? I didn't know, Ade, Chief Olu replies, his voice full of sorrow. I never thought our lives would cross in this way. Ade feels betrayed and lost. The father he trusted has kept a secret that now shatters his world. He steps away, unable to face the situation, unable to think clearly. Inside the house, Aoife notices the shift in atmosphere. When Ade and Chief Olu return, their faces are grim, their expressions heavy with sorrow. Ade approaches Aoife, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk," he says, leading her outside. Once they're alone, he begins to explain. Each word cuts deeper as he reveals what his father has told him. As the truth sinks in, Aoife feels like the ground beneath her has disappeared. The man she loves, the father of her unborn child, is her brother. "No," she whispers, tears streaming down her face. "This can't be true." Ade grips her hands tightly, his own tears falling. "I didn't know, Aoife. I swear I didn't know." The weight of the revelation is unbearable. Both are crushed under the realization that their love is forbidden. Everything they had planned for the future is now impossible. Aoife sobs, her mind reeling from the shock and pain. What could they do now? How could they live with this truth? As they sit in silence, Aoife suddenly speaks, her voice shaking. "How can this be? Chief Olu said he had this affair long before you were born. But I'm only 23. You're older than me by 10 years. Ade freezes. Her words hit him like a spark in the darkness. He turns to his father, anger and confusion written on his face. "Father," he demands, "how can this be true? Aoife is younger than me. How could she be your daughter from before I was born?" Chief Olu looks stunned, his mouth opening and closing without an answer. The air grows thick with uncertainty. Chief Olu's face grew paler and his hands shook as he stumbled over his words. I must have been mistaken," he mumbled, his voice cracking. "Maybe it wasn't exactly as I said." His eyes darted nervously, searching for a way to escape the rising tension. As Ade questioned his father, Amara suddenly understood the truth. The way Ade spoke and the look on Aoife's face made everything clear. Aoife was not just a friend to her husband, she was her husband's lover, and she was carrying his child. Before Ade could press him further, the front door opened and Ade's mother walked in, unaware of the storm brewing inside her home. Chief Olu's panic deepened. He avoided Ade's questioning gaze, unwilling to let the truth spill in front of his wife. Suddenly, Aoife let out a sharp cry of pain, doubling over as a wave of agony struck her. The stress and shock had triggered labor. Her cries echoed through the house, silencing everyone. The argument was forgotten as panic set in. Amara stepped forward immediately. She knelt beside Aoife and spoke calmly. "We need to help her," she said, taking control of the situation. She called for water and clean cloths, her focus entirely on Aoife. Aoife's cries grew louder as the pain intensified. Amara stayed by her side, wiping her face and helping her breathe through the contractions. Despite her own pain and betrayal, Amara focused completely on Aoife. The midwife arrived quickly and took over. Amara stayed nearby, offering quiet support. Ade stood at a distance, watching everything with a heavy heart. The sight of his wife helping Aoife so selflessly only deepened his guilt. Aoife's labor was long and painful. Her screams filled the air, each one a reminder of how much had gone wrong. Time dragged on until finally, the baby's first cry broke the silence. The midwife placed the baby in Aoife's arms. Tears streamed down Aoife's face as she held her child, but her sorrow was clear. The joy of the baby's birth was overshadowed by everything that had happened. Later, as the family gathered in the main room, the weight of the truth loomed over them. Ade's mother, still unaware of the earlier revelations, smiled at the newborn. "A baby is a blessing," she said warmly, oblivious to the tension in the room. Ade couldn't stay silent any longer. He turned to his father, his voice shaking with anger and desperation. "Father, was it all a lie? Or are you truly saying Aoife is my sister? Please tell me this isn't true." Chief Olu hung his head, his voice barely audible. "It's not a lie," he admitted. "I had the affair while I was married. Aoife is your sister." The room fell into stunned silence. Ade's mother gasped, clutching her chest. "Olu," she whispered, her voice trembling. "How could you do this? How could you keep such a secret from us? From your own family?" Ade's world felt like it was crumbling. He turned to Aoife, who sat holding their baby. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with despair. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she rocked the newborn, the weight of the truth crushing her. The joy of new life was drowned out by sorrow, betrayal, and the tangled web of secrets that had destroyed their happiness. Chief Olu, with tears streaming down his face, turned to his wife and spoke with a trembling voice. "I am so sorry for all the pain I've caused. I never meant to hurt you or our family. I was young and made a terrible mistake, and I kept it hidden out of fear. I was afraid of losing everything." He looked around the room, his apology extending to everyone. "Amara Adeife. I cannot say enough how sorry I am for the pain my actions have caused. I take full responsibility for this mess." Amara stepped forward, her movements slow and heavy under the weight of everything she had just learned. Her face showed her heartbreak and her voice cracked as she began to speak. "This is too much to bear," she said, her words trembling. "Infidelity, lies, and now this incest? I cannot do this anymore." Her eyes moved to Ade and Ife, full of sorrow and disappointment. "Mistakes happen, but this is beyond what I can accept. A child has been born, and yes, we must care for that life, but I cannot stay in a family that seems cursed by its own actions." The room fell silent, the weight of Amara's words settling over everyone. Taking a deep breath, Amara steadied herself and spoke again. "I have given my all to this family, but I cannot stay. I need to walk away from this darkness and betrayal to find peace for myself. I am leaving this marriage." Her words struck Ade like a blow. His face was filled with shock and guilt as he tried to reach her. "Amara, please don't do this," he begged. "We can find a way through this. We need you." Amara shook her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I have stayed through so much, but this is too much. You must face the consequences of your choices, Ade, and I need to find my peace." Ade's mother, her own pain evident, added her voice to the moment. "Olu, how could you betray me like this? How could you let this happen to our family?" Her words were filled with hurt and anger as she turned to Amara. "I understand your decision. This family has caused you nothing but heartache. I am truly sorry for everything." In the days that followed, the scandal became the center of attention in the village. Chief Olu, consumed by guilt, worked hard to regain the trust of his family and community. Ade and Ife, burdened by the shame of their actions, faced a future full of reminders of their mistakes. Amara, though deeply hurt, found a new life far from the shadows of betrayal. She began rebuilding herself, finding peace and strength in her independence. Ade and Ife promised their family they would end their affair and focus only on raising their child together. For a while they kept their word, living under the watchful eyes of everyone around them. But the bond between them was too strong to ignore. Within a year, Ife was pregnant with their second child. The weight of their actions and the impossibility of their situation bore down on them. They knew they couldn't stay away from each other, and the truth could no longer be hidden. The whispers in the village were growing louder, and the shame was too much to bear. Late one quiet night, under the cover of darkness, Ade and Ife made their decision. They packed what little they could carry, bundled up their first child, and left the village. The path to the city was long and uncertain, but they didn't look back. They knew they would never return, leaving behind the judgment and pain of their past. The road ahead was unknown, but for Ade and Ife, it was the only way they could live free from the burden of their forbidden love.